and gentlemen, my name is Michael Thurville, sociologist and photojournalist of VEDA Communications, LLC, right here in Houston, Texas. And today we have Chris Fernandez.
Yes.
And if I didn't stutter, I do know the name. Just to let you know, it is Chris Fernandez. And we're here today and we're going to talk very briefly about how he got started. Yes, he is a political hopeful right here in Houston, Texas, running for the same seat as?
Basically, it's District 22 in Fort Bend County.
Okay.
And right now, there's a few folks that are very interested in running for that position for the obvious reasons that, you know, things are not doing too hot in the Republicans in Congress right now as far as our government, what we have in their administration. So it's going to be a hotbed in Fort Bend County in 2026.
Okay. But before we even touch on politics, geopolitics, and culture, let's talk about how you got started. Starting off with the newspaper or the news agency,
Sure.
Then from there.
Yes, it's very. I get asked a lot. I've actually had 2-3 different interviews in the past. A couple of them in Spanish, and this would be my first English one. They've asked me, well, how did you decide why you decided to have a newspaper? I said, well, first and foremost, I am a veteran of the United States Army. I am a Mexican by natural birth. I am also a citizen of these United States. And I'm also an immigrant, and so were my parents. And one day I just got tired of working, Michael.
Wow.
And I got tired of my community in Fort Bend County, Richmond, Rosenberg, Sugar Land. I got tired of all the things that were happening, and I couldn't have a say in what was happening. So basically, I got tired of it. I stopped working, and I was working for 2 newspapers, one of them which was all Spanish here in Houston. And then I moved into the Fort Bend newspaper, which is all English. So I finally, I just had enough, and with my last check, Michael, I started my newspaper. My last check was $187, and I began my newspaper in 2006.
Let's backtrack just for a quick second here. You stated that you were a military veteran. First off, let me say thank you for your service from one veteran to another. I didn't know that, sir. I have to give you your proper salutes. It takes a very special person to serve in any country's military, and this man answered that particular call. What was your unit, sir?
Well, I was what they call, I was in TRADOC in South Carolina.
Okay.
And very basically, I was an E1, I was a private. And my job was administration.
Okay.
I wasn't actually throwing boats or firing anything. But nonetheless, I did a lot of the support clerical.
80% of the military is support-based in the first place. So for those people who were not Force Recon, if you were not a Marine Raider, or you're just not a 11 Bravo series, that's okay.
Exactly.
Never feel bad for not being able to press that trigger. Understand that without people like you, without your quartermaster, sorry about that, there would be no military presence anywhere in the world, no matter what branch of service that you serve. Now, going back, you said you started it with, what, $180?
$187 was my last check at the English newspaper. And I said, well, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and start my newspaper.
Okay.
I want to have a word in what happens here in this county.
Media, specifically news sources, have affected not only you, but millions of people throughout the country.
Yes, and very basically, the state wanted us to register if we were immigrants, address, phone number, and that way they would know where we were and who needed to do what in their process and getting their legalities done, their citizenship and residency, and kind of like what's going on now. Had we done that, all those folks that had registered back then, even the citizens that are now citizens from then, the country or administration would have all their information. And that would be something where you can just go to their house and pick them up. And a lot of what's going on right now. So I wanted to have a voice, Michael, which was the community representing not just Latino Hispanics, not just Mexican folks, but everyone. The majority of the folks that were in my newspaper, I had Nigerian doctors, Vietnamese doctors, Pakistani doctors. I had both Mexican restaurants, I had Asian restaurants, I had a black hospital, which was predominantly black. I had Oak Bend Hospital, Memorial Hermann. I had a lot of hospitals a lot of clinics that were in my newspaper. Most of the time, before they get to do anything with me, I do articles on them, so I find out who they are and what their agendas are.
That's an invaluable resource for any community, but especially Fort Bend, because oftentimes people are living in places where they have absolutely no idea what's around them. They don't have no idea of any of the resources that are literally at their fingertips. Go ahead.
Yeah, and right now, of course, the demographics plays a big part, especially in voting and finding out who are going to be our representatives in state, and here at the house, in the House of Representatives and whatnot in Texas. Finding out information about who's who was very important. For instance, politicians, you have newspapers that basically, in the past, or I don't know about now, but they would take their ad and put their ad in there, and they pay them $300, $400, $500 to place their ad. Well, I was a little backwards, Michael. I enjoyed interviewing the politician to be, the candidate to be. I would interview him and I'll write an article and then give them the option of purchasing an ad. So to me, it was more valuable that my viewership were able to read about who the candidate might be, whether he was Latino, Hispanic, or he was a black fella, he was a white fella. That was secondary, tertiary to me. Most important is what the asset was.
Understood.
What
So
they were about.
fast tracking back over to you, you're a political hopeful.
Right, correct.
And I don't use that term loosely. I mean it with all sincerity, because you see something in the political atmosphere that needs to be addressed. What is it that you see that needs to be addressed on both the local and, let's say, state level?
Well, Michael, I'll go ahead and start. And when people ask me, well, Chris, how do you do this, and where do you decide that, and how do we talk about or criticize this well, Michael, I like to talk about myself first. I like to talk about my life, my people first, and then go to everything else. It's very, very important to look at the landscape, the geographical landscape, look at the political landscape, and see what are the things that are detrimental to our people, first and foremost. And one of those things, of course, with our current administration is, of course, our retirees, retirement money, Social Security, our health care, Medicare, where that's going. It seems as though the folks there now have their hands tied. When I started my newspaper, I wanted to have a voice. I wanted to be able to say, hey, look, I'm reporting on Social Security. I'm reporting on this. This is what I would like to change. This is a landscape that I would like to change. Just so you guys know, El Dorado News, El Dorado Magazine, we endorsed several of the candidates.
Wow.
For Fort Bend County, and majority of them are winning candidates. I like to think that we don't endorse candidates that don't, we'll give you the analogy of a quarter horse. I like to support and endorse quarter horses that are in the lead, not so much behind. And El Dorado News has played a big part in politics in Fort Bend County. And
Wow.
in thinking and doing that, I was like, you know what? I've supported them. I've endorsed them. I've did the phone bank. I've did the block walk. I've advised District 22 in the past. I had a hope for Keisha Rogers in, I believe it was 2022 and 2020. I'm sorry, 2012. In 2012, Keisha Rogers was the first black female that was running for District 22. She was running in the primary, and I did an article on her. And outside the box, she asked me, and I let her know. I said, look, if you want to run in Fort Bend County, these are kind of the things that you might need to do. So I gave her a little bit of advice and said, look, if you want to run and you want, she belonged to the Lyndon LaRouche PAC, which was, Lyndon LaRouche was the economist for Ronald Reagan, one of the economists for Ronald Reagan. So he has, it's called the LaRouche PAC. He has candidates all over the world running for different political posts, offices, if you will. And well, basically, I helped Keisha win the primary. She won against three white men. She won District 22. That was the first time in the LaRouche PAC that any candidate, male or female, and black at this point, something that had never happened before. So my giving her the pointers because I knew the district very, very well.
Okay.
She listened to me. She won the primary, and she beat all those folks, and she won the primary for District 22 in 2012. The sad thing was that for the general election, she says, I'm going to use my campaign manager. I said, okay, no problem, but where's she from? She said, Maine. I said, she doesn't know Fort Bend County. Let me strategize for you and help you get, your general election.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, she lost really, really big. Pete Olson took
Wow.
it really, really bad at that time. But that's one of my big wins in politics, helping someone out. And I've done it with school board members. So I've done it several times. Excuse me, I ran in 2020. I ran for District 22. I was on the ballot in District 22.
Mm-hmm.
And I was running against a whole bunch of hopefuls in the Republican camp.
Okay.
Right. So then Troy Nelms actually took the position. I had a documentation, if you will, when I filled out the paperwork, because I filled out my paperwork on the very last day, and apparently there was something that was not done correctly. So after 30 days or so, my name was withdrawn from the ballot.
Wow.
Yeah. So then basically I didn't get to actually physically run all through the whole campaign. Had I ran, I had no doubt, knowing my connections and knowing that I had a campaign advisor, manager, if you will, for each race, depending on demographic, if you will, for each demographic here in Fort Bend County. And it was something that I strategized myself, and I plan on doing it again.
Well, let me ask you to scale back. You spoke about education.
Mm-hmm.
And as we well know, everybody in Houston has what's called HISD, which is the Houston Independent School District. They're not doing too well right now.
Right.
How is Fort Bend County doing in comparison to HISD?
Well, as far as I'll tell you, HISD is more compact.
Really?
My stepson has done very, very well at Fort Bend County.
Okay.
I've been in the complex. I was a student teacher at HISD.
How was that?
I didn't agree with the bilingual department, where they teach bilingual, which is all Spanish classes. And
Okay.
then at half the day they switch them to English. I don't know if that's changed, but basically what they learn in Spanish, they take again in English. So to me, that's a waste of time for the kiddos.
Okay.
I went to school in Florida, and they didn't have bilingual
What do they have?
immersion, just English only.
Okay.
English
Are you a
only.
fan of that?
I'm tell you why, because I was asked back in, I think it was 1998, 2000, I was asked about that by my principal.
Okay.
And I let her know that I'm a big fan of that, because what you're going to use here in the United States is your English. And your Spanish you will always pick up at home. And if you don't get it all in Spanish at home, you'll get it when you're in junior high or high school. I took Spanish 4 years in high school, and I picked up my Spanish. All I use is English and Spanish.
Okay.
It's multilingual. So I write it in English and in Spanish both.
Wow.
And one day I came home, and my father said, I was holding a newspaper, which was in Spanish,
Okay.
a Mexican newspaper. He goes, you can read that? I said, yes. He looked at me and said, when did you learn how to read Spanish? And I told him, Dad, I've been learning, last semester
Okay.
I was taking Spanish. So he was surprised that I picked it up right away.
Well, that's good. I mean, a lot of times parents are hesitant to teach their children English.
Mhm.
I think one of the biggest things for that is because they may not be as well spoken in English. They may have, certain challenges as English as a second language.
Right.
But in your case, it was a surprise to your dad, but it was something that you easily picked up. Let me ask you, was that due to willpower, or was that just like immersion?
Well, it was more than anything, it was willpower. People
Okay.
think because I'm Mexican and my parents all spoke Spanish, that it was easy for me to pick up. Look, folks, it was not easy. The only things I knew in Spanish were water, food, fork, spoon, juice, soda, the very basic things. The technical things that you read in a newspaper or magazine, or that you need for school in Spanish, I never went over that with my parents.
Wow.
I learned the very, very basics. My dad was like, "Woman, come see what the child wants," because I couldn't communicate with them.
Okay.
And nobody believes me, but I'm sorry, that's the way it was. And because I learned English first, and I learned English in Florida. In Florida, when I was 4 years old, I picked up my English in 2 weeks. 2 weeks I learned my English.
Wow. And for a lot of people, English is really a hard language to learn. I mean, some of the words sound the same. They're spelled differently, and even though they may sound the same and spelled differently, they all have different meanings and definitions.
Right.
You know, so I could definitely understand. And then, especially in Spanish, where you have the masculine and feminine. I believe you talked about that a couple of days ago.
Right, exactly.
Pointed that out.
It was masculine and feminine. You gave me a masculine word, which the terminology has to be feminine usage.
Okay.
And I was like, Michael, you don't say it that way, you say it this way.
And for the audience, can you tell them what the word was? Hopefully, it's not a bad word.
No, I don't remember. I don't remember what the word was.
Okay.
But if you're saying a word, let's just say the word is bad, you say malo.
Okay.
When you're talking about men or the gender is male, and mala, which means bad, also, but with the a at the end attached it's feminine,
Okay.
female.
Understood. Looking at politics, what needs to be fixed?
Well, we're going
Fort
back
Bend?
to that. With Fort Bend County, I think more of the information, well, you're looking at District 22, 20 Arms. I never see anything from his office. Our people never see any updates. I believe that updates and things that you're doing or have done, besides standing with and supporting your president, making sure that your president wins the nomination or wins the presidency. I was just so blown away with that in November when Torniums was quoted as saying on video that they asked him exactly that. It was, what do you want to do for your constituents? What do you think that needs to happen, you know, for the community in Fort Bend County, and what are you going to do to change it? Just the same questions you asked me. Well, first of all, I want to make sure my president wins. That's not,
Well,
and it shouldn't be goal number one. Goal number one are constituents, the folks that put you in office. That's goal number one. What are we going to do to make sure that we assure their futures? Whether their future is that they're 70 years old, 80 years old, 90 years old, their twilight years, and this is the end of, make sure they have their health care, make sure they have the Medicaid, Medicare, make sure they have the Social Security.
and that's a big thing right
That's
now.
a big thing
You know,
right
listen,
now,
I was
especially.
looking at some of the rhetoric that's been going on, and they're trying to push the retirement age up to 70.
Yes.
Now, look,
I just saw that.
I am a Black American person, okay? We don't live that long.
Right.
You know, on average, I mean, 40,
Right.
50, 25 if you're living in Chicago.
Wow. Very
Like,
interesting.
if you live in like some poverty-stricken neighborhood, socioeconomically disadvantaged,
Disadvantage, correct.
you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
What do we tell those people? And then the people who were looking forward to retirement, they had their eyes set on what,
Right.
65?
Believe
60?
so, and 68, somewhere around there. And when you do that, you're very basically taking away their future and their hopes. Michael, and I will reiterate what I've said always and all the time.
Okay.
What is very important right now to me, to you, are the same things that are important, that should be important to the folks making the laws right now. The
Are you
administration.
saying that what we're talking about right now, that affects not only millions of Houstonians and people in Fort Bend County, but just around this entire country? Are you saying that these people that are currently in leadership are not focused on reducing the amount of work people have to give out or put out over their lifetime?
Correct. That big beautiful bill or something that was just signed, that is affecting them so, or it will affect them so very, very badly. You watch and see, this is not helping them at all. You're cutting Medicare, you're cutting Social Security, you're cutting VA, you cut that combined with raising the retirement age really, really puts a bind on folks. And part two is that the economy right now is suffering and everything is going sky high.
It is.
It's not getting any better. I'm gonna say it just for the sake of everyone else.
Please say it.
When President Obama took office, I was at HCC school,
Okay.
and I said, you know, talking about what George Bush had just left him. That's what I was making reference to.
Mm-hmm.
I said, guys, folks, it's going to get worse before it gets better. That did not mean anything detrimental or negative or a bad connotation on what is and who was Barack Obama at that time. I was making reference to what stage was and what health was our economic powerhouse or level at that time. And we found out, usually, Michael, it takes a year before we find out how bad our economy is.
Yes, because it takes time to kind of catch up.
Right. With George Bush, it took less than 6 months to find out where we're at. That's how bad it was.
Wow.
And Barack Obama, whether people believe it or not, was the man that fixed it. And everyone in that class was very upset with me. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's not what I meant. You guys, and I realized that they're all students, they're all in their 20s. And of course I was well into my 30s. And I'm like, they're not thinking the way I think. Politically minded, the fact that I own a newspaper and the fact that I've met a lot of people and I can see through everything. I said, so I just laid back and let them criticize me. The majority of them were black kids and
what did they say?
Asian, Pakistani, Indian. No, they were just ugly to me. They said that I didn't know what I was talking about, that I was hating.
In terms of Barack Obama?
In terms of making the statement that it's going to take a lot of time for Barack Obama to turn the boat around. This is going to get worse before it gets better. That was not negative against
So they took that.
Obama. They took it, literally took it wrong way.
Okay.
And against a lot of it was they misunderstood and they didn't understand politics.
And I think I'm glad you brought that up. That's a very valid point that oftentimes people do not look at. They overlook it. Is that yes, the younger generation does see politics very different, but at the same time, the younger generation of Americans are not that adept into geopolitics or even politics for that matter. And this is most definitely shown with Barack Obama. Now, again, I don't lean on one side or the other. I don't take political sides. But however, I do look at what the expectations that Black Americans put on a Barack Obama versus what they actually got after 8 years. And after 8 years for Black Americans, they really didn't see too much.
Too much. You know, and taking that and take it with a grain of salt, as it were, I look at all the things that all the past presidents have done that were Republican presidents. And, we just lost Jimmy Carter, I believe it was last year.
Yeah.
And I look at the measurement of what the presidency is.
Okay.
And I look at Ronald Reagan, and I remember I didn't too much like Reaganomics. I didn't too
Why
much
not?
like
I'm just curious. Why not?
just the economy. I'm going to tell you, I was young and I didn't understand it too much.
I was even
that's,
younger.
That's the bread and butter of it.
Okay.
And I hated the term Reaganomics, but I know now what it is, with the inflation controlling everything that was the economy.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like majority of his policies. My dad said, I hate him. He hated Reagan, but he ended up liking him a lot.
As he got older?
As my father got older, yes. And I also began to like him a lot. And I was at Reaganomics. I even do like a Reagan joke thing, but I'll do it another day. And it's about the Contra affair. I think the biggest thing was, to me, and I would come home, believe it or not, folks, I would come home and watch Peter Jennings. That's
what?
That's kind of what inspired me to do what I'm doing.
And it's okay. Because believe it or not, people like Tom Sawyer, people like Peter Jennings, Barbara Walters, what is that guy's name? John Stossel. They are the reason why I'm here.
And a lot of folks, about Peter Jennings, and I'd come home from school, and one of the first things I do is change clothes, shower, get something to eat, watch a cartoon or two, and then 6:30, sit in front of the TV and wait for Peter Jennings, because I didn't want to miss anything that was happening in world news, especially the way he presented it.
Yeah.
David Muir, I believe, comes close, but that's about it.
Yes, sir.
For Channel 13, and I enjoyed everything that Peter Jennings had to say every night, and people were like, "No, this guy's lying. He didn't watch news." No, I did. Everybody else is watching. I don't know what shows or MTV or whatnot, and I was a 4th grader, 5th grader watching news, and I enjoyed Peter Jennings fully in representing what our geopolitical atmosphere was like globally.
And I'm glad you brought that up because it's not the same.
No, it's not. Geopolitics is not the same.
It is not the same. The way news is delivered is not the same.
Nope.
I remember having a variety of newspapers that were in existence, going down to the newsstand to actually go outside. For those that don't know what a newsstand is, it's like a small shack, okay, that's on the corner of urban metropolitans. And you could go get your magazine or your news fix for the day from this.
Right, and I know firsthand because I had to put my newspaper in those.
Wow, what was that like for you when you?
It was a
actually
battle.
got it?
Yeah,
Really?
it was a battle. Yes, because I didn't have my own because I would have to buy my own, and they were very, very expensive. So I had one of the guys. I shared my my space with the Green Sheet. The Green Sheet had their own stands, and the Green Sheet printed my newspaper.
Really?
Remember the Green Sheet? It was here in Houston, all over Houston.
Well, you have to excuse me because I've only been here for a short amount of time,
Okay.
coming from Chicago.
A Green Sheet was an American white shopper, English shopper, and basically they would print and have thousands of copies throughout the city. There's
Gotcha.
a north, a west, a south, a east, and of course I was out southwest in Fort Bend County. So I got permission because they printed my stuff, my newspaper. I got permission from them to put my newspaper there. So that was very, very helpful.
Wow.
I didn't, for several years, I didn't have to buy a stand. But dude, it was a battle. You'd have guys throwing my newspaper away or putting it down.
Really?
Yes, putting it down so they could put theirs. It's all a competition.
Okay, yeah. You know what? And that same competition that you're talking about does become very fierce. People are competing for those views. And I miss my opportunity to be able to say, hey, I'm going to put my newspaper into one of these newspaper shacks on the corner. But I will say this, digital is great. However, it will never beat the smell of a newspaper, the tactile touch, and the imagery. And that motion of, it depends on which one you're reading.
Right.
If you're at Chicago Sun-Times, it's like this, but the Chicago Tribune is a fold over,
Right.
and then it's like that, and it's like extra, extra long.
Like mine's 11 by 17.
Okay.
And when you open it, it's super big. 11
Oh,
by
God.
17,
And
tabloid size.
It makes me feel warm and fuzzy on this.
Right. No, check this out. Of course, nobody knew that I was the editor. There were times where I was delivering my newspaper along with the other folks that I had delivering. I would deliver my newspaper, of course, to the Latino and Hispanic area of town, and our people, in case you don't know, the Latino, Hispanic, and Mexican folks, they're very visual. They're more visual than they are literal. Okay.
Yeah.
So their literature and reading is secondary, tertiary to what they can see. So to them, anything that's sports, baseball, anything like that, even car wrecks or whatnot, that's what catches their attention. So one day I went to a Mexican restaurant where I usually drop off my newspaper. Dropped it off, I sat down. I saw these guys, I ordered something to eat. I sat down and I watched a table of all guys just pick up one of my papers. And when they open the paper, they're all reading my sports section. And of course, what they're reading is not really words. They're reading the comments right under the pictures. And I had plenty of pictures and they were in color. So they're all discussing the game because I like to print everything very timely. They're discussing who got hurt, who scored a goal, who didn't score a goal, why they didn't score a goal, why the refs were throwing the game, why this guy fell, and why didn't this guy fall, and how come they got in a fight. And I had all that, in the newspaper. And the whole article explaining all that was to the right of it. They didn't read that. They were reading the notes I was putting under each picture.
Gotcha.
Right, so when I tell you that that's our people, and that's what they look at because they're very visual. They really, really don't want to read. Not that they can't read, but they rather go
Right.
the fast.
The old saying is a picture is worth 1,000 words.
That is correct.
So I guess I can understand that.
Right.
Most definitely. Before we wrap things up here, do you want to talk about who was supposed to be here today in the building?
Sure, that's fine. I believe Miss Yolanda Jones was supposed to be here today.
Yes.
Right. I don't know much about her other than, this last November 5th, she took position here in the House of Representatives. She was in 147 position of the House. And, she's the minority. We're minorities here in Texas also. Democrats are. And she's a Democrat. And very basically, I believe her job function is an attorney. I wish she would have been here so we can hear a little bit more and have a little bit more experience with what goes on with state politics in the House here in Austin. By the way, I've been in Austin. I've supported Beto O'Rourke in the past, so things haven't happened with him. But from what I hear, hopefully he's running for governor in 2026. So that's a little insight for you guys, so you guys know. But Ms. Jones, it would have been so awesome for me to have met her and to listen to how she would fix a few things and look at a few things here in Texas. And of course, she is running for District 18, which is vacated by Sylvester Turner. Before that, Michelle Jackson Lee, who passed away, and Sylvester also passed away. So that's what she'll be running for soon.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, again, I want to say thank you all for tuning in. My name is Michael Thurville of VEDA Communications, LLC. We are here with Chris Fernandez today, political hopeful, right here in Fort Bend County.
That is correct.
Right?
County folks.
That's right. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.